You're listening to Barbell Logic, brought to you by Barbell Logic Online Coaching, where each week we take a systematic walk through strength training and the refining power of voluntary hardship. Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm here with my podcast host, Niki Sims.
Howdy.
How's it going?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I'm glad you and I haven't done a podcast in a while, just you and me. We've had other people on where I've done some with some and you've done some with others. And so we got to hang out a bunch this past weekend in Atlanta, and we talked about what we're going to talk about today on the show. Some things I've been working through my head.
Yeah, it was this new thing that Matt is a constant thinker. It's really amazing. I don't know when your brain shuts off, except that I know when you decide to fall asleep, it's sleep time. But otherwise, you're constantly thinking, and I think it's really amazing. And so you had this theory that you brought up to me and Andrew during a Q&A, which was really interesting, and we get to talk about that today. So
this first came up in the discussions in my academy class. So I'm teaching the very last professor-led academy class, the old school academy class, which is really now over. And in having this discussion, I started to think through things like progress and PRs and why we do it and all that sort of stuff. But I want to come back first and always kind of start with that 30,000 foot view and ask you, not a trick question, what is the ultimate goal for our clients at Barbell Logic? What would you say?
The ultimate goal, if we're talking about that 30,000 foot view, is to drive improvement. Within our culture is improvement and consistency. And we like to help with the relationship of a coach and through training and through programming, improvement in strength, which ultimately we believe really leads to an improvement in their quality of life, because you can really interact with the external world really well when you're stronger. And there's such a big payoff from having a consistent habit of physical self-improvement. So the ultimate goal is helping everybody improve their quality of life.
Yeah. I mean, that's really a big deal. And I think for us, we've talked about this on the podcast before. I think it's one of the things that I hope distinguishes us from some others. And it's not that if your ultimate goal is to be a world champion, powerlifter, strongman, bodybuilder, whatever, that we are making some sort of moral judgment against that. It's just that I think every business and style and culture, if you're intentional about the culture, eventually you find that, you develop that. That kind of stems from the leadership down. And for us, we recognize that quality of life is the thing. Who would say they don't want to improve their quality of life? Since we primarily deal with like general population people, it seems like they have a better handle on quality of life improvement is really what I'm looking for. Strength is awesome. Aesthetics are awesome. But if that doesn't lead ultimately to a better quality of life for me, like hashtag not interested, right? And I'm there.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with clients where we would get them PRs. They would PRing, they would be training consistently, but there was a discrepancy between what they were doing and what was really important to them, and thus what I thought was important to them. So they would leave or something would kind of break in the relationship. So we had, and over the course of us running this business, like it's not just about the 1RMs. There's way more to it than that.
Right. Yes, I would agree for sure. Finding the ribbon that binds it together, I've said this a few times before too, of the training and the consistency and the form to quality of life improvement is really one of the most important things that a coach can do for their client. And for some people, that's easy. For some people, they're just wired to be sort of numbers oriented or statistics oriented or metrics oriented. And they're like, yeah, awesome. Squat keeps going up, deadlift keeps going up, quality of life keeps going up, waist measurement keeps coming down or whatever it is, then quality of life keeps going up. But for some people, it's just like, I just really want to keep up with my kids and not hurt, or my grandkids. And like, I don't want stuff to hurt all the time or be achy or. And so we've also talked about, and I've said this before, that there are lots of ways to improve your quality of life, and strength training is not the only way to do that. It's just what we focus on at Barbell Logic. And I would say, beyond just strength training, fitness in general, right? We're trying to improve people's fitness. Lots of shows about how we think strength training is the best bang for your buck there. It's not the only thing we do. It's just the thing that we focus on first and sort of primary. And so I would like to talk a little bit today about why programming consistent progress and frequent PRs really matter to everybody. And I went back and was thinking, I had this sentence that I remember being in the old Strong Gym philosophy of training. So I launched Strong Gym, I think in July of '08. And I believe I had written this sentence before then, but it's the earliest I think I wrote this in like '04, '03, but it carried over to our philosophy of training. When new clients signed up, the 3 new clients a month that signed up at Strong Gym in the early years, we would hand them this, like, here's our philosophy of training. And it was more for us than it was for them. It's kind of like our business plans now, things like that. Like, we don't write business plans to get loans from the bank. We write business plans for us to keep us focused on the things that matter. And I'm going to read it because I still think it holds true. So this is what it said. We believe that individuals must have goals to help them gauge success in the gym and assess the quality of their progress. We believe the simplest and most gratifying assessment tool of these goals is the personal record, or the PR. We believe so much in its power that we focus a vast majority of our work around the PR and celebrate it no matter how big or how small. That's literally copy and pasted from July 2008, our philosophy of training at Strong Gym. And I think those things are still true.
Yeah, that really held up.
I still program that way. And I think the thing that I want to really flesh out in this podcast is, what is a PR? Or what is progress? Like, how do we actually measure? Because even back then, I don't know that I understood this. I was very focused in July of 2008. I was a professional strongman at the time. I'd been a decent power lifter at the time, where PRs were a 1 rep max squat, a 1 rep max deadlift, right? Like, whatever those things were, a log press in strongman, the heaviest stone I've ever loaded. Like, that was a PR, right? And my argument would be, in general, is that progress / PRs, and I'll talk about why I actually think those are actually very similar, if not the same things, are really the only true objective metric that we have that confirms that stress is going up via progressive overload and that the adaptation is actually occurring, right? So again, let me take one step back. We've talked about many times. Most important part of training and coaching and all that fun stuff is consistency and form. We get consistency and form at Barbell Logic Online Coaching via accountability and a relationship with your coach. You got a good coach. You have accountability with your coach. Your coach breaks down your form every single day. The consistency and form is number one. People want to talk about programming a lot and argue about styles of programming and all that sort of stuff. I don't even want to talk about styles of programming today. I want to talk about what we're trying to accomplish via the programming today. And so when we start thinking about programming, to me, the PR, or progress from the last session or from the last time you performed this lift, by actually having progress there, by improving it over some objective, quantifiable metric, is really the only data that we have that guarantees us that stress is going up, that progressive overload is occurring, and that the adaptation is occurring if it continues to do it. If you just do it from session 1 to session 2, that doesn't necessarily, maybe had a good day. But if you consistently make progress in the gym, that's a great way to know that you're actually getting better in the gym, on the lifts, on the things.
And you can measure the stress by measuring the volume and the tonnage, but you can't tell if that's working towards the adaptation unless you have the objectivity of the PRs.
Well, that's a great question. It's actually a great setup for discussing what is an actual PR. And so obviously no one would argue that an all-time lifetime best, 1 rep max, probably 3 rep max, 5 rep max, things like that, those are clearly personal records. But what I would like to argue is that progress, consistent progress over time, will always lead to PRs, and that PRs aren't only 1 rep maxes, 3 rep maxes, 5 rep maxes, etc., right? So they tell us in general the progress, and we have good data. The progress itself tells us that the minimum effective dose changes that we're making are working. And they tell us that nearly every day and in nearly every exercise. And this is sort of the controversial part maybe of this podcast. But we've lightly mentioned this a few times. So we are in the process of migrating over to our own app, our own software that we've been beta testing and using on maybe 25% of our clients so far. And my favorite thing about that software, about the Block app software, is that it auto tracks PRs.
It's amazing. Love that part.
And it doesn't just auto track just your 1 rep max and your 3 rep max and your 5 rep max, right? Like I can go onto my clients and say, okay, they did 3 sets of 5 today, or 4 sets of 4, or a top set of 5, and then back off 4. It actually tracks their 4 sets of 4 PR,
Mm-hmm.
the 3 sets of 5 PR, their 5 sets of 3 PR, their tonnage PRs, their volume PRs. Like all of those things are tracked. So I would start by saying that I can actually go in on a daily basis to any of my clients, and I can take the lift, the bench press, the squat, the anything, even the variation, the deficit deadlift, whatever. And I can see progress over time. It's on a line graph that says, here's the entire history of this lift for this client for as long as you've coached them over the years. Here is their all-time lifetime PR, and here's the percentage of that they're working at today. So, somebody's done a deficit deadlift, 405 for a triple, and that's their all-time PR. Today, they did 395 for a triple. It'll tell me like, oh, that's 97% of your all-time PR or whatever. Maybe I got the math wrong, but you get the idea. All right, so you can actually see what percentage they are. So one of the things I love about that is not just that we're trying to set lifetime PRs every single time we train, but that we're trying to make progress every time we train. And the argument that I wanted to make this past weekend at the camp in Atlanta, which went great, by the way, was that if we consistently train and we don't have a monkey wrench thrown into training via usually life stress that doesn't affect us in the gym. Sometimes it's an injury in the gym. Sometimes it's something that hurts, but more often than not, it's vacation, it's an illness, it's your kid was up all night throwing up like my kid was 2 nights ago. Like it's that kind of thing that forces you to take really a forced deload, a forced reset in stress a little bit. You go on vacation for 10 days. I joke about that. You go on vacation to Mexico for 10 days and drink margaritas. You're probably not coming back stronger, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not.
Sadly.
You're like, active recovery. Like, well, you drank 1.5 gallons of margarita every day. Like, it's probably not good.
Recoverita.
That recoverita, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make progress. So if I look at my clients' programming and I look at most of my clients are on a weekly split, right? So whatever they did last Monday is similar to what they're doing this Monday, but really with progress in each of the lifts. They went up a little bit in various like load or tonnage or volume or whatever on the lift number 1, lift number 2. They do the same thing on the accessory movements. It's not just like 3 sets of 8 on curls. It's like 3 sets of 8 at this weight. Next week might be 3 sets of 9 at that weight, or it might be 3 sets of 8 at a heavier weight, right? That's progress. And if you string together enough consistent training without a monkey wrench in training, without getting sick, going on vacation, something happens, complete change of goals, deciding to go do a Spartan race, whatever, you will set PRs, right? So that's the first sort of like big philosophical thing I want to throw out there. What do you think when you hear that? Or are there things that you're like, yeah, that sounds right? Or like, what about X?
Well, I think that as an overview, it can take things that you might already be doing and start creating data points in the beginning, like when you first start to look at this. And that could just be like things in your normal day life, like, oh, you've drank water all day, but now you start measuring what you're doing. And then in the gym, you might always end up doing at some point 5x5 in your program, but maybe you never really tracked what your 5x5 was. But now that you start having awareness of it, it starts to carry more importance, which can be very useful in setting a programming direction.
That's right.
And then also just useful in when you have those moments in training where you're wondering, like, am I actually getting better or not? Is this actually working? So I think it can help clarify that. The question that comes up for me, which I'm pretty sure you're going to get to, is what should drive the programming decision? Like, are we trying to, quote unquote, force the PR? Or are we going to take a minimum effective dose change next week? Like, if we have 2 options in front of us, fork in the road for writing the programming, is it going to be an MED change? Or are we going to switch things up a little more in order to get the PR?
Yeah, that's a great question. So ultimately, we know, and I think this is not really argued among people who might not completely agree with our programming philosophy, so this is sort of generally accepted, is that over time, stress has to go up, right? Like, I don't know anybody that argues that stress over time goes down or stays the same.
Yeah, it's just the overtime duration changes the longer we do things. Yeah.
Yes, and this is what has been argued in the past, is that a novice can make quantifiable progress every workout, like every other day, every 48 to 72 hours or whatever. And then intermediate, when you're officially intermediate, for whatever purposes we have to know where you land, an intermediate would make quantifiable progress every week or so. And an advanced lifter is going to take every month or plus, right? So it actually takes the time that it takes to make quantifiable progress. And as that time continuum, as it broadens, you become more advanced. And I actually think that's a pretty good way of looking at it. I just don't think it's quite accurate. I don't think it's quite precise enough. And here's why I say that. So the Block app that I've been using is the thing that's really made me look at this stuff. So I have these clients that I've coached for years. Almost all my clients I've had for years, right? It's the advantage of owning the company. So I get to keep the good ones that I really enjoy coaching, and I've had them for years. By the way, if I used to coach and I don't coach you anymore, it's because I had to give up clients. But most of mine are like, the people I coach at this point are close friends, and they're people that I just really enjoy coaching. And so I don't have anybody that I've coached for 6 months, right? Or for 4 months. I mean, I've coached these people for 4 years. So they're all advanced. And so I take these clients like a Harry Fafudis, who's one of our coaches, or like a Father John Floater, who's been on the podcast, or like a Brett McKay. And I can look at their training every single day, and I can break out that line graph and see that every day they are essentially hitting PRs in every single lift. And I'm talking about a lifetime PR in almost every lift every single day. And if they're not setting a lifetime PR in the lift, you can see the line of progress that occurred since the last setback. So for example, Brett right now, I think he'd be fine with me saying this, he's got a little bit of hamstring tendonitis behind his right knee. So like down distal side. So we've been rehabbing his squat. So that's one of those monkey wrench time periods where he's not squatting PRs. We had to reset him pretty light. We had to do kind of the things we do with a lot of tendonitis, like slow tempo pin squats, where we started him at like 95 pounds because everything else hurt. And guess what we did the next time he squatted? A little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And so you still see the line of progress getting better on even on a lift where you're rehabbing the lift. And for clients like John Floater and Harry right now, and a bunch of my other clients, I break out the data and I'm like, oh my God, you're at 100% on every lift compared to what you've ever done ever. And you're like, well, how realistic is that? Well, if you train consistently long enough, I would argue, and if you're in the middle of the age bell curve, right? You weren't a highly trained athlete in your 30s and now you're 60, right? Like I may never set an all-time PR again. Although I think I will. I think I'm close on several, but I want to get to how I measure that.
We'll set maybe an over 40 PR.
That's right.
A whole bunch of those, really.
Yeah. I would actually want to talk about those here in a minute. That's one of my important things I think we talk about on this show. But I look at them and those guys have strung together such a long period of time of training without any major changes. Father Floater, he occasionally has to go on like a mission trip for like 2 months. When he comes back, he's not setting PRs. He's starting over, but he still makes progress every single day or every single workout until eventually he gets back to PR levels, and then he's setting PRs. And he's not setting PRs or new progress or quantifiable progress every month. He's setting it every workout, right? On Mondays, the guy does his heavy squats and he does his supplemental deadlifts. So he's doing like heavy, normal, competitive squats. He's doing deficit deadlifts. And then he's doing like reverse hypers and like the Schwinn Airdyne or the Echo bike. And he's setting PRs on all 4 of them. Little more, little weight, little extra weight, little more volume. Here you go, right? Now, does that work every single time? Now, sometimes you had terrible sleep the night before. You come in and you do the best you can and you get your numbers and it's the blue collar day and you still maybe set PRs or make progress in the main lifts. And then you just bag your accessories and you walk out of the gym, right? So it's not that you're a failure. It's that the general goal is to make progress / PRs frequently. How frequently? Pretty much every day.
Dang.
If you don't, you're not a failure. That's not what it's about. It's not about like my quality of life is bad if I didn't set the PR. It's just that ultimately what we're trying to do and the best measure for quantifiable increase in stress is that we're making progress every single workout. And if you make progress, if you string enough workouts together, if you do 12 weeks or 13 weeks or 16 weeks in a row, and you don't have any major life events and you don't get sick with COVID and your kid isn't up all night throwing up for 2 straight nights or whatever those things are, or you don't go on vacation, then you're probably setting all-time PRs, but you're definitely making progress. And I think it's really important to constantly think that way. And again, one of the things I love about the Block app is that it's so easy to see. You just hit display PRs and it shows you the line graph and you go like, oh, this actually is relatively linear over time.
So I'm imagining that there are still going to be times where, I think maybe more with the intermediate to advanced lifters, they're running, maybe it's the same kind of 3x5 or 5x5 or 4x3, whatever. They're doing kind of the same rep scheme and maybe every week that is a PR. But then you're going to get to a point where you can't add weight to the bar to get the PR. So you're like, if I add weight to the bar,
That's right.
They will not PR. So does that mean it's time to change the exercise or to change the prescription so that they do PR?
I would argue yes, in general. Now, the first question, maybe the chicken or the egg question is, let's define some PRs. So we know that at some point you can't make linear load PR progress forever. I usually joke about this. I say, if we could, we'd all squat 1,000 pounds. You just keep adding weight to the bar, you squat 1,000, then you squat 1,200 at some point, and then 1,500. Like, can't do that, right? So at some point, you can't make load PRs. You can't always make sure the weight goes up on the bar. The weight doesn't always go up on the bar. But I think it's time we start to talk about PRs outside of just the weight on the bar. Now, strength is about force production. If we can increase weight on the bar, we're going to increase weight on the bar in general. General blanket statement. Doesn't mean we do that for every single person, but in general, if we can make the magnitude of the load on the bar go up, we're going to. But we all know that that doesn't last forever. So then the question is, are there other types of PRs that we can hit that doesn't just mean that the load went up, right? Obviously, right? There are these non-conventional PRs. So the load PR is like any measurement of weight on the bar for X reps, for any lift or variation, or or even for any performance enhancing equipment used. So you can have like, I squatted this weight for this many reps with a belt or without a belt. I deadlifted this with straps or without straps.
Yeah, I feel like it starts to become, there are the very objective ones with certain parameters, but then it also becomes like a perspective where it's just like you said,
Yes.
Different equipment or there was an injury setback. It's almost like, let's look at the bright side over here, or let's kind of see this as a PR based off of what happened before. So
yes, you nailed it.
I like this because it's about objectivity, but then it's also about your perspective, which can actually be incredibly useful in conveying the quality of life improvement and being open to seeing the different ways that it kind of manifests itself.
Yes. So you've got the very normal, very accepted PR metrics, which are weight on the bar, improvements of weight on the bar for any lift or variation. Maybe it's weight on the bar for a certain number of reps. It's a 1 rep max, a 3 rep max, a 5 rep max. It's the main lift. It's a supplement version of that lift. It's with equipment used, without equipment used. All those are generally accepted as PRs. It could be volume for a lift, right? Volume per lift per workout. It could be volume density, like work over time. Tonnage is a really nice PR that we can measure, right? I hit back when I was programming for you, there were times where your knee would be tricky or your hip would be tricky. And I'd be like, the tonnage goal is this. I'd really like you to hit 4 sets of 3, but make sure you get this much tonnage in. Like things just hurt, right? So I think tonnage PRs are really nice PR. But then you start to get into some of these non-conventional, just like you said. What about consistency PRs? What if you're somebody that struggles with consistency? Like your program on a 4-day split and you're averaging 2.5 to 3 days a week, and you string together 12 straight workouts in a row, and that's a consistency PR, that's a big deal. We should celebrate that. All right, now our consistency PR is 12 in a row. And then you had something happen and you missed one. Like, okay, we're going to shoot for a new consistency PR.
I like this one a lot because there could be times when if we have a client who is struggling with consistency and we're trying to force them into this hole of setting new 5RMs all the time, just like forcing it. They don't see that happen. They miss a training day. They feel terrible. And so it really kind of creates some discontent with training and maybe a little even of frustration on the side of the coach. But now, if you really just completely come at it with a different point of view, where it's just like, you know what, the minimum effective inertia, the minimum effective dose here is not the 5RM. In fact, it's the number of times that you're getting into the gym.
That's exactly right. And by the way, that's the one that's probably made the biggest difference in my life since the holidays. It's the consistency of training and the consistency of nutrition. And certainly the amount of weight on the bar I've lifted has gone up, but that wasn't really the goal. And control's gone up, but getting control of the number of calories I've eaten has gone down, but that wasn't ultimately the goal. It was just consistency. I had to redevelop the habit. And that was the most important thing. That was the minimum effective dose change for the maximum return on investment, was just, we try to do something every single day. Rachel and I are training like 4 days a week, and then we just walk around the neighborhood, right? And we walk around, a lot of times we train and we walk around the neighborhood, but on days that we don't train, we always walk around the neighborhood. As a matter of fact, I was on a call just now. She's like, it's going to rain the rest of the day. Today's an off day from training. And she went out and walked by herself, which is pretty rare because she's like, I'm afraid that if I don't walk now, it's going to be raining tonight. And she's like, I ain't walking in the rain. And I'm like, damn it. Now I'm going to have to walk in the rain because it's still, I got to get something in, I don't know. So that consistency mattered.
And well, to me, I see like that seems like a great quality of life improvement because now you're spending this time with your wife.
That's right. We almost always do it together. 99% of the time, we're doing it together, right? So consistency is huge. Frequency PRs, which is directly related to consistency, obviously is the same thing. So maybe you've been like, I've averaged squatting 1.5 times a week, and now I'm gonna squat 2 times a week for 3 years. And like, I'm gonna ramp it up to squatting 3 times a week or 2.5 times a week or whatever that thing is. And then I think like you had started to get to things like age PRs, over 40 PRs, over 50 PRs, post knee replacement PRs, post back injury PRs. And like you can take these things a little too far, right? Like you don't want to, but even like body weight, if you have a major body weight,
it can be a reach.
Well, like for me, a body weight change, right? Like I've lost like 35 pounds.
Yeah.
I know that my squat and my bench press is not going to be the best. Like it's not going to be what it was when I was 305, right?
Yeah.
So by the way, I hit 269 this morning. I'm in the 260s for the first time in like maybe like 8 years.
Dang, nice job. Right? That's so good.
So I thought I was going to get there yesterday morning. I was 270.0. I have a really accurate scale. I was like, I think I can pee a little bit more first thing in the morning, right? Try to go to the bathroom a little bit. And I did.
Just gonna ask
and then I got on and I was still 270.0. And I was like, I know there's less weight in me now.
Did you think of like shaving your beard?
I was like, what is going on? How could I not? And I was like, all right. So, but then this morning I hit it. So even that, right? Body weight PRs. And so like, I'm in the 260s now. I can't compare at 42 years old and in the 260s what I lifted at 25 at 305. But I can make progress every session. I can still do that, right? Post-injury PRs are a big thing. And so we're not talking about lifetime PRs. We're talking about progress. All of those things matter. And so I think as we start to look at that, like I would argue that even advanced lifters like a Harry Fafutis, lifters like a John Floater, lifters like a Matt Reynolds, lifters like a Niki Sims, I make progress on almost every single lift every single day. And there's days that I cash it in on some of the accessory lifts, right? But like even if I'm doing barbell curls or I'm doing rolling dumbbell extensions as accessory lifts, or I'm doing chin-ups, right? You think about like chin-ups or pull-ups. I go, well, I hit 15 total reps last time. I did 3 sets of 5, right? I did whatever, 7, 6, 4 or something. So my total was 15. Like this time I got to get 16. That's it, right? Or maybe it's a consistency of pull-ups. Maybe it's like, I've kind of averaged doing pull-ups once a week, or like sometimes I just like bag it. I'm going to really consistently, I'm going to do 8 sessions of pull-ups this month. And that's the PR, right? Like, so what I'm arguing is that we have to get out of the mental mindset of PRs are only 1 rep maxes, 3 rep maxes, and 5 rep maxes, right? And don't take it overboard. You don't need like, oh, this is my squat PR in Mueller knee sleeves, and this is my squat PR in Ray-Ban knee sleeves, and this is my squat PR in SBD knee sleeves. Like at some point, Let's draw the line, right? But anywhere you can get, I think is actually kind of important. I was showing you guys this yesterday. I'm in like so many holes on my belt that like I have extra large belts from Dominion and Rachel has mediums. We don't have any larges. And I ran out of my belt loops and then I ordered the new sweet 3-inch lever belt from Dominion yesterday, a large, so something in the middle. It's because I was like, I need a new deadlift belt now, right? So I got to get that. So I ordered a new, use the Logic discount code myself to get my own discount. So I was like, I might as well get the discount out of this deal.
Of course.
So I ordered a new 3-inch lever belt. I ran out of space on my XL.
10% off of you and a 10% discount code.
So I ordered a new belt because I ran out of space on my extra large belt. I was like, I was doing a video shoot for Barbell Logic and didn't have a belt to wear. I was like, there's no way I can fit into a medium belt. And I put on the medium. I was on hole 3. I was like, I can't fit into this. This is amazing,
that was
right?
amazing.
So, but the thing is, that guy can't lift quite as much as the guy. I think eventually I'll be able to. My body is not used to this weight yet. I'm still obviously very like subcaloric. But at the point that I go back into a maintenance phase, like then actually strength PRs are probably going to be a bigger driver for me. Right now it's consistency. I'll talk about another PR. Weight and waist are PRs for me. I get up every morning, I check my waist, I check my weight.
Yep.
Some people can get neurotic about it. I want to be very clear. Like we're not talking about neurosis, right? We're not talking about I ate 2,800 calories today. I'm going to eat 2,750 tomorrow. I'm going to eat 2,700 the next day. Like that can get dangerous. So I'm not talking about that. But
yeah, there can be a little bit of a dark side.
It can be.
Yeah.
If you're, as a matter of fact, I have a couple clients, close friends of mine, won't call them out, that they cannot track food on MyFitnessPal because they're just wired for neurosis. And so they can't do it. And that's okay. But the point is that quantifiable progress, quantifiable metrics still very much matter. As a matter of fact, they're the only thing we have that indicate that the program is working. We just have to get away from the idea that the 1 rep max, 3 rep max, and 5 rep max are the only such things as PRs. Because if, as you said in the beginning of the show, your client's 3 rep max goes up, and they don't really care and their quality of life improvement doesn't go up, that metric, that PR didn't matter. So you as a coach, if you're a coach or you're coaching yourself or you're coaching your spouse or you're a budding coach, your job is to find the metrics, the PRs that will clearly be the ribbon that binds it all together that leads to quantifiable improvement that helps them improve their quality of life. That's the goal of the PR. Find the PRs that improve the quality of life, and let's pursue those.
Well, we say this phrase often of when we're actually talking about weight on the bar, we say, meet your client where they're at, which means when you get a new client, they don't come in, you're like, oh, well, you weigh 185 pounds. That means that you for sure are going to squat 200 pounds today on your squat.
Right.
That's not how it works. You meet them where they're at strength-wise. And this concept, I think, meets them where they're at in terms of what's important to them.
That's right.
So we're not trying to really project our importance of, guiding them to 135 RMs, but we're meeting them where they're at in terms of what's important to them. And I think the coach still has the experience and the knowledge to know what the opportunities are. They might know more about what could be important for their client, but they still need to get to that base layer of what's important to them. Spending time with their kids, getting into the gym frequently,
right.
Waist changes, weight on the bar changes, but it becomes finding what's important to them.
By the way, PRs, right?
Yeah, PRs.
What about time with the kids, right? Like, oh, I'm not spending enough time with my kids. Then let's figure out, let me sit down and help you schedule your day. Let's not do 2-hour workouts. Let's do 45-minute workouts. And on average, you're spending 3 hours total during the week in the evening with your kids, and you want to spend 6. And that's a PR. And they get out of the week like, I got to spend 6 hours with my kids. Boom. PR. Right? Like, that's what we're talking about, right? And when we think of progress and when we think about PRs in a frequent manner, then we get to have the little wins more often. Like, it's sort of depressing to be an advanced lifter to say, I'm going to shoot for a PR 16 weeks from now. You got to be on another level mentally to be able to do that. But if you're like, all across those 16 weeks, I have all these little PRs written in that ultimately, and this is, I can remember like back when I was coaching Jillian in her like big time powerlifting days, the goal for her was to go win worlds. That's the goal. But we still set up all these little PRs along the way. And now, interestingly enough, now that Jillian is coaching me in nutrition, every day she reaches out and says like just a little thing that's just encouraging, like, this is so awesome. You came back from Atlanta and your weight was actually down a pound, and your waist was the same. It didn't go up at all. Like, that's huge progress. Like, that keeps me going. So I came home and my waist wasn't any smaller from being in Atlanta, since you took me to every Southern fried restaurant in Atlanta and we ate fried chicken and mashed potatoes and stuff.
No regrets. They were delicious.
It was real good. Cornbread, yum. But I came back and she actually was able to go like, do you understand what a huge deal it is? That one, you dramatically reduced your alcohol consumption during the weekend, which is true. And as you know, although it's still more than what I'm normally doing at home, it's way less than what I would normally do on a business trip. And two, you came home and your waist didn't go up at all. To me, I viewed that as a PR.
Absolutely.
And then it set me up for success this week. Here we are, Friday of this week. I've been home now for 5 days. Literally not an all-time PR, but for as long as I've been tracking for 8 years, I'm at a PR for both body weight and waist now, right? And I can kind of watch the metrics all the time. So I think those little wins are really important, both as a coach and for your clients, if you can figure out the thing that really matters. If your client doesn't care about their 5-rep max, they don't care about their 5-rep max. And I'm not trying to get away from our philosophy of we got to get people stronger. People need to get stronger with the barbells. We're never going to get away from that, right? But we do want to meet them where they are. So if their goal is to lose body weight or waist measurement or fit into that dress or look good for that vacation, or we've been talking about, we've got a before barbells program that's kind of come out for people who are intimidated by barbells from the very beginning. Again, it's called Before Barbells. The goal is to get to barbells. But not everybody's ready to start with barbells on day one. So we meet them where they are and we make progress very frequently and we set PRs along the way and we get the little wins and we encourage. And so I think that when we start to consider that as the driving metric behind minimum effective dose programming, it really helps things come together so that you can have quantifiable evidence that, yes, it's working. So that's my theory.
So what would you do in that case where you have the two options laid out before you programming wise, when you're just like, I can make an MED change or I could do a PR? When you have both options, the choice is to go for the PR?
I don't know that I've ever, it's a great question. So I'm going to ask your question with a question. I'm trying to think of a time that I've actually had to make that decision. I can usually figure out if you have a paradigm shift on what is a PR, then I usually can make a minimum effective dose change that gets them the right PR rather than the conventional PR. So if that's what you're asking, if you're like,
okay,
the minimum effective dose change is not necessarily going to get them a new 5-rep max, but they probably could have a new 5-rep max in them today, but it's going to be maybe not the right thing for them. I choose the thing that's right for them.
Right.
But I still look at it as a PR. And so then I celebrate like, oh, check this out. You had a new 4 sets of 4 PR. And I get it. Some people are going to listen to that and be like, that's ridiculous. No, it's not. Because I've been doing 4 sets of 4 for the last 4 weeks in a row, and they've done a little more on the 4 sets of 4. Or look at this, you hit a tonnage PR. Look at this, you hit more reps on your chin-ups than you ever have.
Yes. Okay. And then similar question, what if the change to hit a PR is bigger than an MED change? So it's like they've been doing 5x5s, just like, okay, we can't do 5x5s anymore. We're done on that progression.
Yep.
Like a smaller change, let's say, would be like 5 sets of 4. But we know if we could pivot them right now, and they already have a 5 sets of 4 PR or something. But if we make a big pivot to a 4 sets of 3, like that's a pretty big pivot in terms of volume, probably a big change in intensity. So what if going for the PR, it's not minimum effective?
Okay, it's a great question.
Okay.
I get it now. So that's where the inevitable, a little bit of a reset occurs. When you start a thing that's new, you start a thing that's novel, whether that's a new lift, a new supplemental lift, or a new set and rep scheme. And it's a little bigger than a very minor minimum effective dose change, right? So we're not changing like a single rep or single set. It's a little bit more. You decided like, there's a little too much here, so I need to make a little bigger change. Then that becomes the new starting point for that spot. So you say, okay, you've been doing 5 sets of 5. I need to move you to 4 sets of 3 because you're just not able to recover on 5 sets of 5 for whatever reason, right? Or you're spending too much time in the gym, you spend less time in the gym. So 4 sets of 3, and you try to meet them where they are. And as a coach, you make the best guess you can about like where that's going to start. And you often start conservative. You don't start at PR levels on day one. You start like, okay, here's the thing that I think you could hit for, again, just as in descriptive purposes, not prescriptive, but like this is going to be kind of RPE 7.5 or 8, somewhere in that ballpark, right? You'll have 2, 3, 4 reps left in the tank. And then each week, you're probably going to continue that same set and rep scheme, but make progress off of week 1. Week 2, it goes up a little bit more. Week 3, it goes up a little bit more. Week 4, it goes up a little bit more. It starts to get heavy. Then you start going, okay, can I get a tonnage PR out of this? Can I add an extra rep? Should I add an extra set instead of, whatever, what do we say? 4 sets of 3, 3 sets of 4, whatever. You go to 5 sets of 4, whatever. And so the thing this has changed in me also is that it's changed my idea of I almost never write in planned deloads anymore. I used to, if you look at some of my old writings and stuff about like block training, not Barbell Logic training, but like Eastern block training, like the Soviets and whatnot, they would do maybe like 3 weeks of an intensity or loading phase where they would build up an accumulation of fatigue followed by a week of deload where they would allow the fatigue to dissipate. And I like doing that more now when it's necessary. I found clients that are able to just like, things are going well, their stress is low in their life, they're eating enough calories, and they can train hard and have a pretty damn big loading schedule for like 6 or 7 weeks in a row. And then they start to like get real slow, get fatigued, my elbows are achy. You'll start to hear those things that you hear. And then we put in the deload because that's when they need it. But more often than not, I don't have to schedule a deload. 95% of the time, they schedule the deload for me because they're like, hey, coach, just want to let you know, I'm only going to be able to train Monday and Tuesday this week. And then I'm going to Cabo San Lucas for like the next 6 days with my girlfriend, and I'll pick back up next Monday. Perfect. Deload. Matter of fact, that lets me know I'm going to kind of push their ass on Monday and Tuesday that week because they're not training for the whole rest of the week. So I've got some extra stress that I can play with there on Monday and Tuesday. Right? That's what I'm trying to do as a coach. I just let them do it. Now, sometimes those deloads occur and you don't know they're coming. Coach, I got fired from my job today. Coach, I got, in a fight with my wife. Coach, I got COVID. Coach, my family got COVID. My kid got sick all night long. You're like, okay, then we got to make a change on the fly. You just, I slept 2 hours last night. It was awful. Then you make a change on the fly and you back them off, and they can't set a PR the next session. They go into a mini reset, and then they start making progress every single session from that point. And so that's what you do. And if you track your body weight or your waist or things like this, or even your PRs over a long period of time, I've tracked my weight and my waist on an app for like years. It's not linear, right? Like I've been trying to lose weight for a long time. It goes down and then something happens, whoop, jumps up 14 pounds. And then it goes down and whoop, jumps up a little bit more. And it's the same thing here, right? The slope of the curve will be different, right? It'll go up for a while consistently. And then some life event happens and it drops. And you don't set PRs after it drops. You have kind of a new starting point, which is probably significantly higher than the starting point it was when you very first started linear progression as a novice. And you start making linear progression again, but you're not a novice anymore. And then it kind of slows down and you keep making progress and you keep making progress. But the idea there is consistent progress. And my argument would be that everyone, novices can make consistent progress. They can just make consistent progress every 48 to 72 hours on actually adding weight to the bar. And that for intermediates and advanced, they make progress pretty much every day as well. They just make different types of progress. Sometimes it's load, sometimes it's volume, sometimes it's tonnage, sometimes it's consistency. Like all of those things matter. Sometimes it's age PR, sometimes it's weight PR, sometimes it's waist measurement PRs, like any of those things. So we've got to start to think about what are the PRs that matter, that improve my quality of life. As a coach, those are questions you should be talking to your clients about and making sure that you're tracking those things. And to me, that gives us quantifiable evidence that minimum effective dose styled programming is working. Now, sometimes I have a client that's just like, coach, everything's there. I'm going for a PR today. Guess what my answer is? Yes, do it. If they're motivated to set a PR, I get it. You were set for 3 sets of 5 and you're like, I feel freaking great. Can I go for a PR? My answer 99% of the time is yes.
Yeah.
You're motivated to hit a PR. You want it. It's there. It's there for the taking. Go take it. It's not minimum effective dose. It's okay. Right? Minimum effective dose is this sort of general philosophy of training. The more dogmatic we get about it, the more we make harsh rules about it, the less it's going to actually work. It's that the general gist is we make small changes every single workout, every single day, increasing stress via load, frequency, volume, tonnage, etc., to consistently make progress for as long as we can until typically life throws something at us that makes us reset. That's MED in a nutshell. And eventually life will throw something that makes you reset a little bit. And hopefully you don't have to reset 50%. Hopefully you only have to reset 10% and start running back up. So that's how it's working for the most part in my programming with my clients. And again, the new block app has really given me the data I need to see that is actually what's happening. Sometimes there's this feel that that's what's going on, but I love the fact that because it tracks all that automatically, you're like, nope, that's exactly what's going on. It's been really cool.
Yeah, it's nice to have the visual. Absolutely.
So there you go. So remember, PRs are not just 1 rep max, 3 rep max, and 5s. Think about those PRs that matter to you. If you're listening to the show, especially if you're a client of Barbell Logic and you haven't talked to your coach about this, reach out to your coach. Say, hey, here's what I really like to do. You know, there's a thing for me. I'd like to bench press 315 for a PR set of reps. I'd like to hit 315 for 15, and I'm getting close. I'm never going to hit a bench press 1 rep max PR again. I've torn both my pecs enough times. I'm too scared to try it. I might have it in me. I'm just like, I get to be a mental head case when I get over 400 pounds on the bench press. But I think I can hit 315 for 15, and that's a lifetime PR. So right now I'm going in and I'm hitting 315 for a few more reps every time. And if I don't get it, so here's what I'm doing. I'm hitting 315 for 10. If I come in the next time, I hit 315 for 9. Guess what I do? 315 for another set and hit it for 6 or 7 more reps. And I'm like, okay, I know I made quantifiable progress today on the bench press. And the next time I come in and I hit it for 11 or 12, right? And then eventually, like in the next couple of weeks, I hit 315 for 15. It'll be an all-time PR in the bench press for me over 40. I know I benched 460, but I think I did it at about 31, 32 years old. So 10, 11 years ago. I'm probably not ever going to do that again. That doesn't mean that I can't pursue some post 40 PRs.
Post pec tear PRs.
Post pec tear, post 40 PRs. You know, I'm a wise man now.
Post lawsuit.
Yeah. That's right. So, all right. Good. Thoroughly hammered.
Yeah, I dig it. Thank you.
I'm pretty excited about it. Yeah, it keeps things consistent. And again, what I love about it from a service perspective, if you're able to communicate it well as a coach, is it gets your clients little wins. You get to celebrate. I'm going to go back to this one sentence from the olden days. We believe the simplest and most gratifying assessment of the tool of these goals is the personal record. We believe so much in its power. We focus a vast majority of our work around the PR, and this is it, and celebrate it no matter how big or how small. As a coach, you celebrate the PRs for your clients, whether that's a 2.5 pound PR or a 1 pound PR or a 1 rep PR. It doesn't matter. We celebrate the PRs because we're trying to get our clients wins. When they get wins, they stay motivated to be consistent, and that consistency and the constant wins almost always lead to quality of life improvements, especially if we're tracking the right PRs.
Yeah.
That's key.
Awesome.
You've been listening to another episode of the Barbell Logic podcast. If you haven't done it yet, we'd love a 5-star review, especially on Apple Podcasts. Those are the ones that help our algorithm. You can listen to us anywhere. You can listen to us there, Spotify.
Leave us a review. It'll give us a number of reviews PR, which would be awesome.
That would be awesome. We are approaching 1,100 at this point, and we've maintained our 5-star review.
Woo.
We would love some more 5-star reviews to counteract the few that are not 5 stars, which are okay. We like to hear those too every once in a while. Love for you to email those in and then leave the reviews. Let's keep those 5 stars. So if you haven't done that yet, we'd love for you to do it. Share this podcast with a family member or friend. Love to hear your ideas on PRs. If we didn't talk about a PR that you track, I'd love to hear it because I'm really interested in what things matter. So we'll post those in the show notes, how to reach out to us. You can also ask questions for future Q&A episodes. And bro, in August, the block party is coming. I'm so excited.
Oh, I'm so excited for the block party. I mean,
we are going to have such a blast.
Amazing lectures, amazing food. It's just fun. You know, in your normal life, you might not get to talk about lifting as much as you really want to talk about lifting. But this weekend, we might actually push the boundaries on talking about lifting too much.
And you get to be with like your tribe of people who love the same stuff you love. That's what I really like. Right.
Right.
So we're going to get to lift together and coach together and great talk and great food and whiskey if you like that too. And if not, it's perfectly okay. We'll probably do some dancing. We might do some karaoke. It's going to be a blast.
Woo.
I'm going to just show everybody we're going to have a great time. So save the date, August 6th through the 8th. That's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're going to kick off Friday afternoon. We're going to train together. We're going to set some PRs. It's going to be freaking fun.
Yes.
That's how we're going to kick it off. We're going to have great food. We're going to have great talks all day Saturday. Lots of fun people will be there. Some keynote speakers. And we're basically shutting down an entire hotel complex, and we're going to rent out the whole thing.
Oh, man.
So save the date. We'll post the tickets soon, August 6th, 7th, and 8th, coming up in Springfield, Missouri. You're going to love it. If you haven't been here, it's a great town. Niki, you come here quite a bit. It's a really nice town, right? Great food, great restaurants.
I've been to worse.
That was the worst sales pitch ever. Come on.
I'm just kidding. No.
Restaurants in this town. Come on, bro.
Oh my gosh. No, I love going to Springfield, especially going to Springfield with wherever Matt Reynolds is, because he like knows all of the best places to eat, all of the cool things about it. And honestly, Springfield is, every time I go there, I have a blast, and I actually really can't wait to go back. So, and I can't wait to like share it with more people. It'll be fun.
There's been this thing where I've always been like, it'd be so cool to have like all the staff and all of our clients and our listeners like come out and hang together. It'd be a blast. So save that. Would love to see you there. Again, save the date. Tickets will be up on the website soon. And we've got camps all over the place. Finished a camp this past weekend in Atlanta. Next one's coming up in Utah.
That's a blast.
We got stuff coming up in, I don't know, Virginia. We've got Portland. We've got Scotland. We've got England. I'm missing one or two. Go to the events page on the website and check those out. Those are selling really, really well, which means people are like,
yeah,
I need human interaction. And so you get human interaction. Niki and Andrew and I are always there. We try to make it really fun and high service.
Please, tactile cues.
So, yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's been a blast just to get to hang out and actually talk to real humans in person. It's been kind of cool. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.